Deal breaker. The benefits package became a deal breaker in the negotiations.
Deal breaker. Dealer.
Dealer.
A dealer in modern art.
Dealership. Dealership.
Dealing.
Dealing.
His financial dealings.
She is ruthless in her dealings with competitors. She is ruthless in her dealings with competitors. She is ruthless in her dealings with competitors.
We've had dealings with him in the past. We've had dealings with him in the past.
Penalties for drug dealing. A reputation for fair dealing. Dealt. Dealt.
Dean.
Dean.
The admissions dean.
Near is the Dean of American Human Rights Activism.
Deanery.
Deanery.
Dean's list.
Dean's list.
Dear.
Dear.
Oh dear, I've broken the lamp.
I think I'm getting a cold. Oh dear, oh dear.
Dear Sir or Madam.
Dear Mrs. Wilson.
Dear Meg.
Cars are 59% dearer in Britain than in Europe.
Mark became a dear friend.
His sister was very dear to him.
Household economy was something my mother held very dear. Household economy was something my mother held very dear.
Here we are, back in dear old Manchester. She grasped the side of the boat and hung on for dear life.
How did the interview go, dear?
Can I help you, dear?
Come along, my dear. Take a seat.
Be a dear and make me a coffee.
Carolyn's marriage to Pete cost her dear.
Dearest.
Dearest.
Dearie.
Dearie.
Dearly.
Dearly.
James loved her dearly.
I would dearly like to know what she said.
The weakness in their defence has already cost them dearly this season. The weakness in their defence has already cost them dearly this season.
Ordinary people are paying dearly for the mistakes of this administration.
Dearth.
Dearth.
A dearth of job opportunities.
Dearie.
Dearie. Death.
Death.
The death of his mother came as a tremendous shock.
Cancer is the leading cause of death in women.
How Danielle met her death will probably never be known. How Danielle met her death will probably never be known.
His friend was close to death. His family are still mourning John's tragic death.
The anniversary of Lenin's death.
A homeless man who froze to death.
The 76-year-old pensioner was beaten to death.
Legend has it that Sarah was put to death for practicing witchcraft. Legend has it that Sarah was put to death for practicing witchcraft.
Members of the family have received death threats.
He remained president until his untimely death.
2 of the passengers managed to escape death. A campaign to reduce the number of traffic deaths.
Deaths from cancer.
I heard there'd been a death in the family.
The latest bombing is the death of all our hopes.
These regulations could spell the death of the American car industry.
She was scared to death of what might happen next. She was scared to death of what might happen next.
I'm absolutely sick to death of it.
He drove at a speed which frightened Leonora to death. He drove at a speed which frightened Leonora to death.
She used to worry me to death.
They just work you to death in that place. They just work you to death in that place.
Most of his material has been done to death by numerous comedians.
They will fight to the death rather than give an inch of ground. They will fight to the death rather than give an inch of ground.
Soldiers locked in a struggle to the death. Soldiers locked in a struggle to the death.
The leadership election has become a fight to the death.
That boy will be the death of me.
Deathbed. Deathbed.
On her deathbed, Miriam's mother reveals that she never knew her father. The disease allowed no time for a deathbed repentance. The disease allowed no time for a deathbed repentance.
Death blow.
Death blow.
His decision to leave the show has delivered a death blow to the series. His decision to leave the show has delivered a death blow to the series.
Death camp.
Death camp.
Death certificate.
Death certificate.
Death defying.
Death defying.
Death-defying film stunts.
Death duties.
Death duties.
Death knell.
Death knell. The loss of Georgia would sound the death knell of Republican hopes. The loss of Georgia would sound the death knell of Republican hopes.
Deathless.
Deathless.
Deathly.
Deathly.
She was deathly pale, and looked as if she might faint.
A deathly hush fell over the room.
Death mask.
Death mask.
Death penalty.
Death penalty.
3 Britons are facing the death penalty for spying.
Death rate.
Death rate.
Childhood death rates.
Death rattle.
Death rattle.
Death row.
Death row.
A murderer on death row.
Death sentence.
Death sentence.
He received a death sentence.
Premeditated murder carries the death sentence.
Cancer is no longer a death sentence.
In 1987, the government passed a death sentence on the river by granting permission for the new dam.
Death's head.
Death's head.
Death squad.
Death squad.
Death stare. Death stare.
Death throes.
Death throes.
The peace pact seems to be in its death throes.
Death toll.
Death toll.
As the unrest continued, the death toll rose.
The official death toll stands at 53.
Death trap.
Death trap.
A car with tyres in this condition is simply a death trap.
Death warrant.
Death warrant.
By indulging in casual sex, many teenagers could be signing their own death warrants.
Death wish.
Death wish.
Before I did the jump, people would ask if I had a death wish.
Deb.
Deb.
Debacle.
Debacle.
The debacle of the 1994 elections.
Debar.
Debar.
All 5 men were debarred from entering France for 3 years.
Debark.
Debark.
I remember how glad I felt debarking from a ship in Bremerhaven after 6 days on the ocean. I remember how glad I felt debarking from a ship in Bremerhaven after 6 days on the ocean.
Debase.
Debase.
The medical profession has been debased by these revelations.
Actors who debase themselves by participating in the show.
Currency debasement.
Debatable.
Debatable.
A debatable point.
It's debatable whether this book is as good as her last. It's debatable whether this book is as good as her last.
Whether the object was used for rituals is highly debatable. Whether the object was used for rituals is highly debatable.
Debate.
Debate.
The gun control debate in the U.S.
The new drug has become the subject of heated debate within the medical profession.
There has been widespread public debate over the introduction of genetically modified food.
There was much lively debate about whether women should spend more time in the home.
A fierce debate raged over which artist's work should be chosen for the prize.
The ongoing debate between environmentalists and the road-building lobby over the future of our countryside.
Nuclear power has always been a topic that has sparked off considerable debate.
A debate on legalized gambling.
A televised debate. A televised debate.
It would have been better to hold the debate during the day.
What topics are under debate in Congress this week?
Whether that would have made any difference is open to debate.
The issue will be debated on Tuesday.
Meanwhile, philosophers debate whether it's right to clone an individual. Meanwhile, philosophers debate whether it's right to clone an individual.
An invitation to debate with William on the future of democracy. An invitation to debate with William on the future of democracy.
His conclusions are hotly debated. His conclusions are hotly debated.
I debated with myself whether I should tell anyone.
I'm still debating what to do.
For a moment, Mary debated telling Rick the truth.
Debater.
Debater. Debauched.
Debauched.
Debauchery.
Debauchery.
A life of debauchery.
Debenture.
Debenture.
Debilitate.
Debilitate.
He was debilitated by his illness. The state is debilitated by inefficiency and corruption.
A debilitating disease.
Debility.
Debility.
Physical and mental debility.
Debit.
Debit.
Bikes are easy to park, but on the debit side they can be dangerous in traffic. Bikes are easy to park, but on the debit side they can be dangerous in traffic.
The sum of £25 has been debited from your account. The sum of £25 has been debited from your account.
Purchases are debited against the client's account. Purchases are debited against the client's account. Debit card.
Debit card.
Debit note.
Debit note.
Debit note. Debonair.
Debonair.
Debrief.
Debrief.
The returning bomber crews were debriefed. The returning bomber crews were debriefed.
A debriefing session.
Debris.
Debris.
She was hit by flying debris from the blast.
Clean the ventilation ducts to remove dust and insect debris. Clean the ventilation ducts to remove dust and insect debris.
Debt.
Debt.
She had debts of over £100,000.
He had enough money to pay off his outstanding debts.
Students who run up huge debts. Nearly half the students said they were in debt.
The band will be in debt to the record company for years.
A rash business decision left him $600 in debt.
The club sank deeper into debt.
Braque acknowledged his debt to Impressionist painting.
I owe a debt of gratitude to my tutors. Debt collector.
Debt collector.
Debtor.
Debtor.
Debt relief. Debt relief. Debt-ridden. Debt-ridden.
Debug.
Debug.
Debunk.
Debunk.
His claims were later debunked by fellow academics. His claims were later debunked by fellow academics.
Debut.
Debut.
He made his Major League debut as shortstop.
His Broadway debut was The Scarlet Pimpernel.
Their debut album was recorded in 1991.
He scored in his debut match for the club.
The show will debut next Monday at 8 p.m.
Ralph Lauren debuted his autumn collection in Paris last week.
Debutante.
Debutante.
Deca.
A decaliter.
The decathlon.
Decade.
Decade.
Decadence.
Decadence.
Decadent.
Decadent.
Pop music was condemned as decadent and crude.
Decaf.
Decaf.
Decaffeinated.
Decaffeinated.
Decal.
Decal.
Decamp.
Decamp.
The wealthier inhabitants decamped to the suburbs.
Decant.
Decant.
Never decant cleaning products into old pop bottles. Never decant cleaning products into old pop bottles.
Decanter.
Decanter.
A crystal decanter.
Decapitate.
Decapitate.
A decapitated body.
Decathlon.
Decathlon.
Decay.
Decay.
Her body was already starting to decay.
Most archaeological finds are broken, damaged or decayed. Most archaeological finds are broken, damaged or decayed.
Decaying organic matter.
Hundreds of historic buildings are being allowed to decay.
Britain's decaying inner cities.
In Orthodox Europe, mass religion seems to have decayed less. In Orthodox Europe, mass religion seems to have decayed less.
Old cars in various stages of decay.
Tooth decay.
Poverty and urban decay.
During the war, the area fell into decay.
Moral decay.
Decease.
Decease.
On your decease, the house passes to your wife.
Deceased.
Deceased.
The deceased left a large sum of money to his children.
Deceit.
Deceit.
An atmosphere of hypocrisy and deceit.
Deceitful.
Deceitful.
His manner was sly and deceitful.
His lawyer argued that his client had not acted deceitfully.
Deceive.
Deceive.
He had been deceived by a young man claiming to be the son of a millionaire.
He tried to deceive the public into thinking the war could still be won.
I wouldn't deceive you about anything as important as this. I wouldn't deceive you about anything as important as this. I wouldn't deceive you about anything as important as this.
I thought she loved me, but I was deceiving myself. He didn't deceive himself that he and Ruth could remain friends.
Don't be deceived by the new cover. This is a rehash of old hits.
Decelerate.
Decelerate.
A declaration in economic growth.
December.
December.
Last December they visited Prague. We got married in December. Jake's birthday is on December the 6th.
The event was to take place on the 6th of December.
Her letter arrived December 6th.
Decency.
Decency.
A judgment reflecting the decency and good sense of the American people.
The film was banned on the grounds of public decency. Is there no sense of decency left in this country? If they're going to charge people a fee, they ought to at least have the decency to tell them in advance.
Decent.
Decent.
A decent salary.
Don't you have a decent jacket?
A house with a decent-sized yard.
Their in-flight magazine is halfway decent.
The majority of residents here are decent citizens. A decent burial.
Paul visited the local bars more frequently than was decent for a senior lecturer.
The chairman did the decent thing and resigned.
I decided her father was a decent guy after all.
It was decent of you to show up today.
Are you decent? Can I come in?
Decentralize.
Decentralize.
Many firms are decentralizing their operations. A decentralized economy.
Deception.
Deception.
She didn't have the courage to admit to her deception.
He was convicted of obtaining money by deception.
Deceptive.
Deceptive.
Some snakes move with deceptive speed. Some snakes move with deceptive speed.
Gwen's students may look angelic, but appearances can be deceptive. Gwen's students may look angelic, but appearances can be deceptive.
Misleading and deceptive adverts.
Deceptive practices.
Deci.
Deci.
A deciliter.
Decibel.
Decibel.
Noise levels exceeding 85 decibels.
Decide.
Decide.
Has anything been decided yet?
Tina's decided to go to Rome for her holidays.
It was decided that 4 hospitals should close.
I can't decide whether I like him or not. People have a right to decide how to spend their own money.
A meeting was called to decide between the 3 candidates.
You must decide for yourself.
The trainees decide among themselves what programs to take.
He eventually decided against telling her. After a long discussion, they decided in favour of the older applicant.
It was the penalty kick that decided the match.
Taxes could be the deciding factor for millions of floating voters.
The look he gave her decided her not to ask.
The Commission will have the power to decide disputes.
If the parole board decides in his favour, the prisoner will be released.
Have you decided on a date for the wedding? Decided.
Decided.
A decided change for the better.
Decidedly.
Decidedly.
Cole's style is decidedly more formal than the previous managers.
I'm not going to do it, said Margaret decidedly.
Decider.
Decider.
This next round will be the decider.
Deciduous.
Deciduous.
Decimal.
Decimal.
Changing to a decimal system.
Calculations accurate to 3 decimal places.
Decimalization.
Decimalization.
Decimal point.
Decimal point.
Decimate.
Decimate.
The population has been decimated by disease.
Decipher.
Decipher.
She studied the envelope, trying to decipher the handwriting.
Decision.
Decision.
Do you ever wonder if you made the right decision?
She refused to discuss her decision to quit the group.
We finally came to a firm decision on the matter.
Viewers make the final decision as to who should be eliminated from the competition.
The judge's decision is final.
The ability to act with speed and decision.
The court has the ultimate power of decision.
Decision maker.
Decision maker.
The corporation's key decision makers.
Decision making.
Decision making.
Attempts to involve workers in decision making. Decisive.
Decisive.
Women can play a decisive role in the debate over cloning. We will take decisive steps towards political union with Europe. A decisive leader. A talent for quick, decisive action.
The answer was a decisive no.
Yet again, we have failed to act decisively.
Military decisiveness. The speed and decisiveness of his victory.
Deck.
Deck.
Let's go up on deck.
Peter stayed below deck.
A staircase leading to the passenger deck. A staircase leading to the passenger deck.
I managed to find a seat on the upper deck.
Eddie returned to the flight deck.
Deck furniture.
Irene shuffled the deck.
A deck of cards.
The street was decked with flags for the royal wedding.
Jerry just swung round and decked him.
Deck chair.
Deck chair.
Deckhand.
Deckhand.
Decking. Decking.
Deck shoe.
Deck shoe.
Declaim.
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 Declamatory.
Declamatory.
A declamatory style. Declaration.
Declaration.
A ceasefire declaration. Under Islamic law, it was possible to divorce by simple declaration.
The declaration of war.
The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights.
Declarations of undying love.
A declaration of taxable earnings. Declarative.
Declarative.
Declare.
Declare.
A state of emergency has been declared.
The court declared that Brown's case should be reviewed.
Several countries wanted Antarctica to be declared a world park. Several countries wanted Antarctica to be declared a world park.
The city was declared to be in a state of siege. I declare you man and wife.
The war was declared illegal by the International Court of Justice. The war was declared illegal by the International Court of Justice. Mr. Steele has been declared bankrupt. We celebrate September 16th, the day when Mexico declared independence from Spain. It's not fair, Jane declared. He declared his intention to stand for president.
Carol held a press conference and declared that she was innocent. Edward declared himself angry and frustrated.
Angry residents have declared war on the owners of the factory.
All tips are counted as part of your earnings and must be declared. All tips are counted as part of your earnings and must be declared.
I should at this point declare an interest. I own shares in the company. I should at this point declare an interest. I own shares in the company.
Declared.
Declared.
It is their declared intention to increase taxes.
Declassified.
Declassified.
Declension.
Declension.